The galaxy was burning. The mighty fleets of humanity had fought with courage, but one by one they were shattered. The Empire's warships filled the stars like endless shadows, each vessel larger and more powerful than the last. The final human defense line near Jupiter had fallen, its ships broken into drifting wrecks across the void. The news spread quickly, from the outer colonies to the core worlds. The message was the same. The Galaxy Empire had won. In the great hall of the Imperial flagship, alien commanders celebrated. They raised their voices in pride, boasting about the end of human resistance. For centuries they had conquered species across the stars, but humanity had resisted longer than most. Now at last, humanity was finished, or so they thought. The Emperor of the Galaxy Empire sat upon his golden throne, his voice echoing with pride. Humanity defied us, but they are nothing. Their fleets are dust. Their leaders are dead. Their world will kneel, he declared. The court cheered, their voices filling the chamber with arrogance. To them the war was over, and Earth was theirs. But then, the chamber doors opened. Guards stepped aside as a single figure entered. He was not a soldier, nor a general. He wore no armor, carried no weapon. He was only a man, dressed in the plain robes of a diplomat. The crowd fell silent, surprised at the sight. The Emperor narrowed his eyes. "Who dares enter this hall?" he demanded. The guards announced his name, a human diplomat sent to represent the last survivors of Earth. The Emperor laughed, a cruel and mocking sound. "A diplomat? At a time of war? Humanity sends a voice when they should have sent their chains," he mocked. The alien commanders laughed with him. The human diplomat did not laugh. He walked forward calmly, each step slow and steady. He did not bow, he did not tremble. His face showed no fear, only quiet. Confidence. He stopped before the throne and raised his eyes to the Emperor. "You believe you have won," the diplomat said softly, his voice steady. The hall grew quiet again, for his tone carried a strange weight. The Emperor leaned forward, amused. "Believe? Foolish human, we do not believe. We know your fleets are gone, your armies destroyed. Your world is at our mercy," he thundered. The commanders nodded, their eyes gleaming with cruel delight, but the diplomat only smiled faintly. "You still do not understand," he whispered. "Understand what?" the Emperor demanded, his voice sharp. "The only rule that matters," the diplomat replied, his tone calm and quiet. The Emperor frowned, confused for a moment, then laughed again. "You speak in riddles, human. You stand here alone, powerless, your people broken, and you dare speak of rules?" The court erupted in laughter once more, but the sound felt weaker than before. The calmness of the diplomat unsettled them, though none admitted it. Outside the flagship, the stars burned with wreckage. Thousands of human ships floated lifeless, their metal husks drifting in silence. To any observer, it was the image of total defeat. But within the heart of the Empire's victory, a shadow of doubt had begun, planted by a single whisper. The diplomat stood in silence, his eyes steady. He gave no long speech, no plea for mercy. He only repeated his words, softer this time. "The only rule that matters," he said again. The Emperor waved a hand in annoyance. "Take him away. His words are empty. His people are finished." But as guards moved closer, some of the commanders hesitated, their eyes uneasy. Why was the human not afraid? Why did his whisper feel heavier than all their triumph? The hall, once filled with celebration, now felt colder. The diplomat was dragged away, yet his calm expression lingered in their minds. Outside, the Empire declared its victory to the galaxy, but inside, deep within the hearts of its rulers, a seed of doubt had been planted, and that seed would soon grow into a storm. For humanity was never truly defeated, and the whisper of one man would change the fate of empires. The news of victory traveled faster than light. Across the stars, the Empire sent their message. "Humanity is broken. Earth will kneel," their broadcast declared. World after world repeated the same story. The Empire had triumphed, and the human race was finished. In the grand hall of the flagship, the celebration continued. Musicians played alien instruments. Commanders feasted. Banners of conquest were raised. But in the corner of the chamber, the human diplomat sat in chains. He was guarded by soldiers with plasma spears, yet his eyes remained calm. He did not shout. He did not beg. He only watched, as if waiting for something the Empire could not see. The Emperor rose once more, his voice booming across the hall. Let the galaxy witness, humanity has lost. Their fleets lie in ruins, their leaders are gone. Their worlds will belong to us, he proclaimed. The audience roared with approval, but when the Emperor looked at the chained man, his smile faded slightly. The diplomat met his gaze without fear. You celebrate too early, the diplomat said softly. The Emperor laughed harshly. Too early? Look around, your armies are ash, your colonies burn. Your people are slaves waiting to be chained. But the diplomat shook his head slowly. You see wreckage, but you do not see truth. You hear silence, but you do not hear whispers, he replied. The words were simple, but the court grew restless. Something about his calm tone unsettled even the bravest generals. One commander stepped forward, sneering, Your fleets are gone, your cities are dust, what truth remains? The diplomat tilted his head, his voice low and even. The truth is that you believe in power, but power does not last. The only rule that matters is never surrender. The hall grew silent. The laughter died. His whisper seemed to echo louder than the Emperor's roar. The Emperor rose angrily. Never surrender? You are chained like an animal. Your people bow in defeat. Surrender is all you have left, he thundered. But the diplomat smiled faintly. If you think chains can hold humanity, then you have already lost, he said. The guards tightened their grip on his arms, but his words spread like a spark in dry grass. Several alien dignitaries exchanged uneasy glances. They had seen other species crushed by the Empire. None had spoken so boldly. Later, when the celebrations ended, whispers spread through the corridors. Why was the human not afraid? What gave him such calmness? Was humanity truly broken, or had they hidden something the Empire could not see? The doubt began to spread, though no one dared speak it aloud. Far away, on the edges of the galaxy, hidden signals pulsed in the dark. Encrypted human transmissions whispered through secret channels, messages the Empire could not detect. Humanity's survivors were not kneeling, they were planning. The Empire's intelligence believed Earth was cut off, powerless, but they were wrong. The diplomat knew this, and his calm smile carried the weight of secrets. On the flagship, the Emperor ordered the diplomat brought before him again. He stared into the man's steady eyes, trying to pierce the mystery. What are you hiding? What rule do you speak of? He demanded. The diplomat leaned closer, his chains clinking softly. The only rule that matters, he whispered again. The Emperor slammed his fist on the throne. You dare mock me with riddles? You will speak clearly, or your people will suffer. But the diplomat did not flinch. Perhaps you will suffer first, he answered quietly. The Emperor ordered him taken away in fury. Yet the words lingered in the minds of every soldier and officer who heard them. For the first time, fear did not come from humanity's weapons. It came from their silence, their whispers, their refusal to kneel. In the prisons of the flagship, the diplomat sat alone. But even in chains, his calm eyes told a story. The story of a species that had lost battles but not the war. And soon, the galaxy would learn that the Empire's victory was built on sand, for humanity had not surrendered, and their hidden strength was waiting in the dark. The diplomat's whisper would be the signal, and when it came, the stars themselves would burn with rebellion. The prison cell was silent. The human diplomat sat on the cold floor, his hands chained, but his mind free. Guards passed by, whispering about him, their eyes filled with unease. He had no weapons, no army, and yet his words weighed heavier than fleets of warships. The Empire had crushed humanity, yet somehow, victory felt hollow. In the Emperor's War Council, tension grew. Reports began arriving that confused the generals. Supply ships had vanished in deep space, convoys destroyed without warning. Mining stations at the edge of the galaxy went dark. No signals, no survivors, only silence. The commanders argued, accusing each other of failure, but none dared admit the thought growing in their hearts. Could humanity still fight? The Emperor roared in anger. Impossible, humanity is broken, they cannot strike back, he shouted. But fear crept into his voice, the diplomat's whisper echoed in his mind. The only rule that matters, meanwhile, far from the Empire's fleets, in the dark corners of the galaxy, humanity's hidden colonies stirred to life. They were not destroyed as the Empire believed. They had vanished from records on purpose. Cloaked fleets waited in silence, hidden in asteroid fields and nebulae. Engineers worked without rest, building weapons stronger than before. They had lost battles, but not their will. The diplomat knew this secret, and every calm word he spoke was a blade against the Empire's pride. Back in the flagship, a commander entered the prison. He leaned close to Tiu. He diplomat and whispered, "Tell me the truth, human. Are your people really finished?" The diplomat's eyes glimmered. "Would I sit calmly in chains if they were?" he asked softly. The commander froze, his heart beating faster. The calmness of the prisoner was more terrifying than any weapon. Soon after, another report arrived. An entire fleet sent to patrol the outer rim had disappeared. No distress call, no trace of battle, only empty space. The generals grew pale. The emperor slammed his fist on the table. "Human tricks, nothing more. They are desperate. They are weak," he shouted. But his words convinced no one, not even himself. In the darkness of his cell, the diplomat closed his eyes. He remembered the signal he had sent before surrendering himself. A single coded whisper hidden in the Empire's victory broadcast, a signal only humanity's survivors would understand. It had been received, and now the shadows of the galaxy were moving. On distant worlds under the Empire's control, strange uprisings began. Slaves broke their chains, rebels attacked garrisons, supply lines burned. The Empire tried to crush them, but the flames spread too quickly. Every rebellion carried the same words, whispered in secret. The only rule that matters. The Emperor felt his empire shaking beneath him. He thought chains and fire had ended humanity, but instead they had planted defiance across the stars. Every world that rose against the Empire carried the same spark humanity had shown, unbroken, unyielding, unafraid. In his throne room, the Emperor demanded to see the diplomat once again. The human was dragged before him, still calm, still smiling faintly. "What are you hiding? Where are your fleets? Where are your armies?" the Emperor demanded. The diplomat leaned closer and whispered, "Right where you cannot see, waiting where you cannot reach." The Emperor's face twisted witty. "His rage. You are bluffing," he roared. But deep inside, he felt the truth of the words. The hall was silent, commanders uneasy. For the first time, the Empire felt powerless. Not because of weapons, not because of numbers, but because of a whisper that spread faster than fear, stronger than fire. And in the silence of the galaxy, humanity's hidden strength was awakening. The Emperor turned away, but his eyes betrayed his fear. The diplomat lowered his head slightly, calm as ever. He had revealed nothing, yet said everything. The storm was coming, and the Empire could do nothing to stop it. The Galaxy Empire had always believed in fear. Fear kept planets silent, fear kept species obedient, fear built their throne. But now, fear was turning against them, and it began with whispers. Across the outer colonies, strange reports arrived. Fuel depots exploded without warning, armories went dark, fleets vanished into empty space. The commanders blamed each other, but no one had answers. The Emperor raged, demanding control, but the more he struck, the weaker his grip became. On one border world, soldiers prepared to march on rebels. But when the order came, half the army refused. They laid down their weapons and shouted the same words. "The only rule that matters." The phrase spread like fire, reaching worlds the Empire thought secure. It was not just humanity speaking now. It was slaves, rebels, broken species who had suffered under the Emperor's rule. Inside the flagship, the Emperor's council was in chaos. Admirals shouted, governors begged for reinforcements, generals demanded executions, but every world they tried to control slipped further from their grasp. And in the center of this storm sat the human diplomat, still chained, still calm, his eyes cold with quiet certainty. The Emperor confronted him once more, his voice filled with fury. "This is your doing, these uprisings, these vanishings, this chaos. It is you," he roared. The diplomat tilted his head slowly. "I am only one man in chains. Your empire collapses because it is built on fear, and fear always breaks," he answered. The Emperor struck him across the face, but the man did not flinch. Instead, he whispered again, "The only rule that matters." The generals who watched felt the words coil around their hearts. They had crushed thousands of worlds, but never had they seen a prisoner speak as though he was the victor. Doubt spread like poison in their minds. If humanity was truly broken, why did the Empire feel weaker every day? Soon after, more reports arrived. Entire fleets abandoned their posts, vanishing into the dark. Prisoners escaped high-security colonies as if doors had opened for them. Hidden human operatives struck from the shadows. No one saw them. No one caught them. But their work was everywhere. The Empire's strength was bleeding out in silence. In secret chambers, alien dignitaries whispered among themselves. They remembered how the Empire once mocked humanity. But now the humans' defiance inspired more courage than the Emperor's armies. Perhaps the humans were never defeated, one whispered. Perhaps they were only waiting, another replied. The Emperor grew more paranoid. He ordered mass executions, burning cities, destroying planets that showed even the smallest sign of rebellion. But every act of cruelty only fed the fire. Every scream became another whisper of defiance. Every broken world carried the words, "The only rule that matters." In the dark of his cell, the diplomat smiled faintly. He knew the truth. The Empire was not being destroyed by weapons alone. It was being undone by its own arrogance. Humanity had given the galaxy a spark, and the spark was spreading faster than fire. The chains around his wrist no longer felt heavy, for he knew the Empire was already cracking. On one world, an entire city rose in rebellion overnight. The Emperor sent fleets to crush them, but when the warships arrived, they turned their guns on each other. Sabotage from within tore the armada apart. From the wreckage rose human warships long thought destroyed. They were battered, scarred, but alive. And they carried the same message into battle. Never surrender. Back on the flagship, the Emperor heard the news. His roar of rage shook the throne room. How can they fight? Their fleets are gone. Their armies destroyed. But the diplomat's whisper came back to him. Right where you cannot see. The Emperor's hands trembled, his heart heavy with fear. For the first time in his rule, he felt powerless. The galaxy itself seemed to shift. Where once the Empire's banners flew, now flames of rebellion burned. The mighty chain of control was breaking, link by link, and behind it all, the calm whisper of one human guided the storm. The cracks in the Empire had become wounds, and soon those wounds would tear the throne apart. The Galaxy Empire ruled through silence. For centuries, no world dared speak against them. But now, silence had broken, and it was replaced by whispers. It began with prisoners on mining colonies. They carved strange words on the walls of their cells. The only rule that matters. At first the guards laughed, but soon the words spread to every prisoner. When executions began, the condemned shouted the phrase with their final breath. The whispers refused to die. On distant trade worlds, merchants passed the words in secret. Slaves whispered it to their children. Even soldiers began repeating it when no commander could hear. The Emperor tried to erase the phrase, banning it across all networks. But the more he silenced it, the louder it became. The whisper had become a storm. In the Imperial Council, governors argued in panic. Rebellions grow faster than we can crush them, one cried. Our fleets defect, our soldiers falter. Something unseen moves against us, another shouted. The Emperor slammed his fist on the table. Human tricks, nothing more. They are weak, broken, finished, he roared. But in his heart he knew it was no trick. The Empire was bleeding, and a whisper was cutting deeper than any blade. In his cell, the diplomat listened to the chaos beyond the walls. The guards grew restless, their eyes avoiding his. One day, a young soldier approached him in secret. He whispered, "Is it true? Are your people really gone?" The diplomat's eyes met his, calm and steady. "We are never gone," he replied. The soldier trembled, then whispered back, "The only rule that matters." From that moment, even within the Emperor's flagship, the whisper spread. On the outer rim, whole worlds rose in rebellion. Alien species long enslaved turned their weapons against the Empire. And when asked why they fought, they gave the same answer. Because humanity never surrendered, and neither shall we. The Empire sent armadas to crush them, but ships vanished before reaching their targets. Hidden human fleets struck from the shadows using stealth and sabotage. They were ghosts in the void, reminders that humanity was still alive. The Emperor's rage turned into desperation. He executed governors, burned cities, silenced entire planets. But every act of terror only strengthened the whisper. Even his closest generals began to doubt. What if the humans planned this from the start? One asked quietly. What if their defeat was only an illusion? The diplomat was brought again before the throne. Chains rattled as he stood tall. The emperor glared at him, his eyes burning with fury and fear. "You speak a phrase that poisons my empire. What rule is this? What power do you hold?" The diplomat's voice was calm, his words soft. "The rule that no empire understands until it is too late." "And what is that rule?" the emperor demanded. "That the will of the free cannot be broken," the diplomat answered. The hall fell silent. No one dared laugh, for they knew the whisper was already stronger than the throne. Across the galaxy, messages spread through hidden networks. Images of human survivors appeared, leading fleets once thought destroyed. Colonies the empire believed crushed rose again in defiance. Each victory, no matter how small, carried the same phrase. "The only rule that matters." The emperor tried to remind his people of the empire's strength, but when he spoke, his words felt empty. When the diplomat whispered, his words felt eternal, and even chained. The human's voice reached farther than the emperor's fleets. The galaxy itself was changing. Once silent worlds now burned with rebellion. Once loyal fleets now flew the banners of defiance, and everywhere the whisper of humanity became the anthem of freedom. The empire was still vast, still powerful, but it no longer ruled the galaxy. It only chased shadows, and those shadows were growing stronger, for humanity had given the galaxy a gift. Not weapons, not ships, but a whisper, and whispers can move stars. The throne of the Galaxy Empire shook with anger. Every day, new reports of rebellion arrived. Every day, fleets vanished, worlds burned, and whispers grew louder. The Emperor's voice, once unchallenged, was now drowned by chaos. The Empire was still vast, but its power slipped like sand through his hands. On the outer rim, entire armadas defected. Captains who once swore loyalty to the Empire now raised new banners. Banners painted with a single phrase. "The only rule that matters." The Emperor tried to crush them, sending his most loyal fleets, but when those fleets entered the dark nebulae, they never returned. From the shadows came human warships, long thought destroyed, scarred, battered, but alive. They struck with precision, cutting supply lines, breaking blockades, burning imperial pride. The galaxy trembled as humanity reappeared. The Emperor had declared them broken, but here they were, ships rising from the void, soldiers returning from silence. They had hidden their strength, waited for the moment, and now the moment had come. In the imperial court, fear consumed the generals. The Hands were never defeated, one whispered. "They planned this. They let us believe we had won," another said. The Emperor silenced them with rage. "Lies! We crushed them," he roared. But even as he shouted, his words rang hollow. The diplomat was dragged into the throne room once more. His chains rattled, but his eyes were calm as ever. The Emperor's voice shook with fury. "You think your whispers can defeat an empire? You think shadows can destroy legions?" The diplomat lifted his head. "Not shadows," he said softly. "Hope, courage, and fire. That is what you cannot kill." The Emperor's face twisted, but the generals around him lowered their eyes, for in their hearts they felt the truth. Beyond the palace walls, rebellion became war. Slave armies rose in unison, striking with fury. Entire planets refused tribute, defying the Emperor openly, and everywhere human fleets appeared, guiding the uprisings with secret weapons and hidden bases. The galaxy, once chained by fear, now moved with courage, and courage spread faster than terror. The Emperor ordered his fleets to Earth. He would make an example of humanity's home. But when his armada reached the solar system, the trap was sprung. Out of the asteroid belt, cloaked human warships emerged. They had rebuilt in silence, their weapons sharper than before. The Empire's mighty fleet was surrounded. For the first time in centuries, the invincible Empire tasted true fear. The battle was brutal. Human warships fought with relentless fury. Rebel fleets joined them, striking the Empire from every side. The Emperor's armada, once unstoppable, broke apart in fire and ruin. And when the smoke cleared, Earth still stood, unbroken, unbowed, unafraid. Back on the flagship, the Emperor trembled. "How?" he whispered. The diplomat standing before him smiled faintly. "You celebrated too early. You believed fear was eternal. But fear always fades." "And what replaces it?" the Emperor asked bitterly. The diplomat's whisper was steady. "The only rule that matters." The throne room fell silent. Even the emperor's guards lowered their weapons. They realized the empire they served was already dead, not destroyed by fleets or fire alone, but by a whisper that had become stronger than their chains. The cracks in the empire were now complete fractures. World after world broke free. Fleets defected, cities rebelled, and the galaxy itself shifted away from the throne. The emperor had lost, and humanity had returned. The Galaxy Empire was burning. Once endless fleets were now scattered wrecks drifting among the stars. Once loyal worlds now raised banners of freedom. The throne that had ruled for centuries shook with silence, for silence was all the emperor had left. In the great hall of the flagship, the emperor sat upon his golden throne, but the gold no longer shone with pride. It was covered in ash, the ash of defeat. Around him, generals stood in silence, their eyes lowered. They no longer saw a ruler. They saw a fallen tyrant. The doors opened, and the human diplomat was brought forward. His chains had been broken by the very guards who once held him. He walked calmly across the floor, his footsteps echoing louder than drums of war. The emperor's voice cracked as he spoke. You destroyed everything." The diplomat shook his head slowly. "No, you destroyed yourself. We only showed the galaxy what you tried to hide." The emperor's eyes burned with hatred. "You whisper of rules, but empires are built with blood, with power, with fire." The diplomat stepped closer, his gaze steady. "And yet your fire is gone, your power shattered, your blood spilled into the void." He leaned close, his voice soft but unshakable. "The only rule that matters is this: free will cannot be conquered." The generals trembled at the words, for they knew the empire had been defeated not by fleets, not by weapons, but by the refusal of one species to bow. Humanity had suffered, bled, and nearly burned away, but they had never surrendered, and that defiance had given courage to all the stars. Outside, the galaxy roared with rebellion. World after world declared freedom. Alien species that had been broken for centuries now rose again. They spoke the same words humanity had whispered. The only rule that matters. The phrase was no longer a whisper. It had become a war cry, a promise, a truth that could never be erased. The emperor collapsed onto his throne, his crown heavy upon his head. "You think the galaxy will follow you? You think humanity will lead them?" he hissed. The diplomat turned away, his voice calm. "Humanity does not lead. We remind them of what they already are. Free." The throne room doors opened. Human soldiers entered, followed by alien rebels. Together, they raised their banners, not the flag of conquest, but the flag of unity. The empire's banner was torn down, trampled into dust, and with it, centuries of fear ended. The galaxy watched as the emperor was led away, the once mighty ruler now just a prisoner of his own arrogance. The diplomat did not cheer, he did not gloat, he simply raised his voice for all to hear. Victory is not about battles won, it is about the will to never kneel. The words echoed across star systems, carried on every channel. They became more than history, they became law, and so the empire was no more. From its ruins rose something greater, worlds united not by chains but by choice. Armies fought not for conquest, but for freedom. And at the center of it stood humanity, not rulers, not conquerors, but guardians of a rule stronger than empires. In the centuries to come, children across the stars would learn the story of a people who stood against the galaxy's greatest power, a people who lost battles but never their spirit, a people whose whisper became a storm and they would repeat. The words that broke an empire, the only rule that matters.